The two stood apart, no more than 5 feet from each other. The battle had already begun to rage about the two young men, their eyes locked in the center of a proverbial storm. "Shoto, stand down. This isn't your fight," the white-haired young man declared calmly as he could. "Toya, you know I can't do that," the boy with half-red and half-white hair declared. The older of the two men, scarred deep with wounds and burns of many origins, grit his teeth. "Shoto, please. As your older brother, I am begging you to stand down. This isn't your battle. It never was, and it never will be," Dabi said, stepping away from his baby brother. "Toya, what are you planning to do to Dad?" Shoto asked, and the scarred man sighed. "Shoto, you know exactly what I plan to do," the older brother responded solemnly. The younger brother let out a low breath before beginning to blaze and frost. "Then you know why I have to stop you," Shoto said. The scarred man let out a tired laugh and gave a proud smile. "I'm glad you grew up strong, Shoto." The older brother took up a fighting stance, getting ready to engage his younger brother. "Come on then, knock me down, kid." Shoto couldn't help but smile back, lunging in. Whoa, 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 whoa. What was that intro? That wasn't Dabi. Dabi's cold, callous, curt, and mad with revenge, and would never declare pride in anybody. What is that? That guy with the pencil, you devious fiend. What have you done this time? Well, I'm here to tell you exactly what I've done. I've altered Dabi, Toya Todoroki. Now, if you're new to the channel and don't know why I would bother to stick my grubby little fingers in a fan-favorite character like Dabi, allow me to explain. I think Dabi sucks. Clear as day. Or should I say, he has a lot of wasted potential. The narrative that Horikoshi weaves pre-Dabi's major appearance in the Paranormal Liberation War had me very intrigued. I was expecting a lot from Dabi, and it ended up being deeply disappointing to me on multiple aspects. Those aspects being his backstory, his attitude toward the Todoroki family, and his resulting character. Since we have those 3 main points laid out, allow me to quickly explain what I will be maintaining about Dabi, because pretty much the rest of his character will be 100% overhauled. Number 1, the most important one, his design. Be it beyond me, a novice artist nowhere near the level of the average fan artist, to try and change anything about the perfection that is Toya Todoroki's swagger. Horikoshi designed all variations of him super, crazy, insanely well, and I could never compare, so that's staying exactly the same. 2, his end goal. I think this is one fundamental thing I just cannot touch. In the same vein, I cannot touch his design. The Todoroki family B-plot of My Hero Academia is entirely reliant on his motivation, so I can't touch that without entirely reworking a major section of the plot, which I can't do in any short order. That's a what if, not a rewrite. 3, Dabi needs to be saved. Now, notably, in the main narrative, I'm personally rooting for the double death of Dabi and Endeavor, a beautiful set of fireworks to send them both into a flaming grave. However, based on Horikoshi's general reluctance to end characters any more important than set dressing, looking at you, Bakugo, the general direction of how the series is going with saving the most heinous of characters, and the general goal of the Todoroki family, I think this is also a necessity. 4, his powers. I'm going to keep his weakness to his own flames. In fact, I'm probably going to double down on it. This is also just a fundamental part of Dabi that makes him Dabi, so I'm going to need to keep that in. 5, and finally, his narrative placement. What I mean by this is that Dabi must appear as an antagonist for a majority of the narrative. He cannot be saved any earlier than the Second War. That's it. All else is fair game for me to play with to my liking. So let's begin with what all good stories do. The beginning. Dabi's backstory is one of my most massive disappointments in all of My Hero Academia. This stands in stark contrast to My Hero's A-plot main villain, for the most part, looking at you all for one, Shigaraki. I love Shigaraki's backstory because it contextualizes and explains the monster that Shigaraki would become. It's perfect, only adding to Shigaraki and his mania rather than detracting from it. A+ backstory. Dabi, on the other hand, well, it's a backstory. I have a couple major issues that we'll tackle one by one, but I think the biggest one for me is that Endeavor is too good of a father. Now you may be wondering what I mean. To elaborate, one of the largest parts about Endeavor that makes him my favorite character in My Hero Academia and possibly all of New Gen is his development from worst father of the millennium to Daddy Dever. The biggest thing that I don't like about Dabi's backstory, and that rubs me the wrong way, is the fact that Endeavor already is kinda sorta Daddy Dever. He loves his wife, loves his kid, doesn't push the kid too hard, and immediately tried to replace him when he finds out he doesn't have ice as planned, and the moment he finds out Toya is actually hurting himself through training, he stops it. Now, you may be wondering why this is a problem. There is such a thing as anti-development, and it's possible that Endeavor got more and more desperate as time passed and his kid perished. At least as far as he could tell that his kid had perished. And to be fair, you are absolutely right, but remember what I said about Shigaraki's backstory. Justifying mania. Where Shigaraki's father succeeds where Enji fails is actually making it seem like he could drive his kid crazy. Shigaraki's father abuses him, beats him, yells at him, tortured him for doing nothing at all but having a dream that the dad just didn't happen to like. He causes Shigaraki's mania, awakening his bloodlust, and All for One did the rest. That's justifying mania. Meanwhile, with Daddy Dever spawning in around 20 years too soon, it kinda just makes Dabi look crazy for the sake of being crazy. He literally swings on his baby brother and mom with the intent to end them after Endeavor never forced him to do anything other than stay safe and live a happy life. You know, the job of a father. So all of Dabi's hatred towards him feels relatively unjustified, especially for the extremes he goes for it. The one thing I'll give Dabi that actually justifies his mania is that I perfectly understand what child Dabi saw, what Toya saw. In the mind of a child, all he's seeing with his dad continuing to pump out younger siblings for him is replacements. He sees that he's just getting replaced and ignored and pushed to the side. I perfectly understand that. And I understand why he felt abandonment with that. But if anything, that should be a factor of Dabi's mania, not the entire reason. Just as All for One is a part of Shigaraki's mania, not all of it. So, how do we fix this? Well, that's easy. Make Endeavor much worse. Yes, even worse than the Endeavor that Shoto grew up with. However, focus it all on Dabi, or in this case, Toya. This Endeavor is desperate, nearly unhinged. He wanted Rei for a quirk, but fell in love with her and her power. He sees strength in her. Thus, he expects the world out of his child. Toya is trained so fiercely that it barely even counts as training. He's beaten, battered, bruised, yelled at, essentially tortured from even before his quirk appeared, which for plot reasons I'm pushing back to age 7. You know, I need to keep him alive longer. Toya is to be Endeavor's greatest creation, and there is no time to waste. Toya, at first, when he's young, runs to his mother for help, as any child would. Rei does her best to fight back against Enji, but the moment Toya feels like his mother is in danger of facing one of the many strikes he always faces, he steps in front of her and takes the hit instead, returning to training. From that day forward, he internally promises himself that he won't let his mother undergo the same pain that he does, even if it takes his life. Hi, out of narrative, back to complaining. Another thing I feel very mixed on is Dabi's general role amongst the main new-gen villain trio of Shigaraki, Toga, and himself. It feels like there's a missed opportunity to have them each reflect a different type of evil. Call it the D&D fan in me, but I think they should have their own lawful, chaotic, and neutral alignments. In the current narrative, just in my own interpretation mind you, Shigaraki would fall under neutral evil, more calamity than chaotic. Toga would fall under chaotic evil, as her lack of logic and general mania along with her ideology and reasoning fits that bill for me. In current narrative Dabi, also just chaotic evil in my eyes. Like I said, his backstory fails to justify his morals or ideology, or the extremes he goes to fulfill it, and he's quite spastic and strange at times, even when he's young. And overall, he doesn't just seem to make much sense at all, very akin to Toga. That's why, in an effort to alter this, I want to make Dabi fall under lawful evil in this little trifecta of ours. How? Well, you'll get more elaboration on that in a bit. But one major element that should be noticeable from how he acted with Rei in my scenario is that I'm adding a little something. A little something that the main character of My Hero Academia also has. A savior complex, the need to take the weight of the world upon himself and protect those he views as innocent. We'll keep developing this as we spin this little tale of mine. Back to the narrative, Dabi does end up developing his own quirk, and Endeavor has mixed feelings. On one hand, he's excited to see that the flames seem even more powerful than his own. On the other, there's clearly no ice, like intended. Unlike the original where Endeavor settles for less, this angers him, and he harshens up on Toya's training even more and quickly gets to making another child. Toya endures, but due to the harsher training in this timeline, the weakness reveals itself even sooner. Endeavor's flames with Rei's constitution. In the original timeline, Daddy Dever steps in and shuts it all down, out of fear for his son's life. However, in this timeline, this drives Endeavor even crazier. He lost so much time to a useless brat. No, he could salvage this. If beasts like Gang Orca and Watchdog could be heroes, so could his own flesh and blood, no matter how burned they may be. Yeah, I know, I'm making Endeavor a fundamentally awful human being, but trust me, it's for character development. In the end, everything's worth it for character development. So, Toya is forced to keep training, day in and day out. At night, he watches over his pregnant mother as his father does hero work, tending to her every need. In these moments of solitude between the two, the mother thanks her son, and profusely apologizes to him about the suffering he endures at the hands of his father. Toya, more concerned about his mother's well-being, writes it off and says it's all to become a great hero. It's all going to be okay. Rei thanks the child and tells him, no matter what, he will always be her little hero. Toya internalizes the praise and thanks his mother. Eventually, Fuyumi is born, and Toya is extremely happy to have a younger sister, and as burns begin to grow down his body, each night he keeps up his internalized duty, taking care of and protecting his mother and now baby sister. Endeavor does not lessen up on his training, however, hunkering down even further, to the point where Toya is covered in bandages that hide burns and bruises from his baby sister, who he intends to shield from his life as Endeavor's heir. Time passes, and Fuyumi manifests her own quirk 3 years earlier than Toya did. However, to Endeavor's despair, she can only control ice despite what her multicolored hair implied. This infuriated Endeavor, but brought ease to Toya's heart. However, Endeavor was filled with even more blind rage, and all that rage Toya ended up acting as a magnet to, taking more abuse and building up more and more hatred of his own father. However, he had a job to do, and a family to protect. In time, his mother was pregnant again, and like before, Toya spent relentless nights taking care of her and now Fuyumi, who worked to treat the burn scars she discovered her older brother had with her own ice. Not long after, Natsuo was born, and Toya felt his mission get reignited with a greater passion than ever before. He knew his father would not hesitate to torture Natsuo like Toya was tortured for years, so Toya made sure to keep Endeavor's eye by constantly training more and more, and burning ever brighter, at the cost of his own flesh. Fuyumi, now old enough to truly understand the ramifications and implications of her brother's burn marks, joined Rei's pleading for him to stop destroying himself, but the young boy would always dissuade their worries. He needed to do this, protect them, and save them from the monstrous hero known as Endeavor, no matter what. Natsuo manifested his quirk eventually, and it would also be ice-based, and Endeavor was ever furious. But for the first time ever, Toya managed to catch one of his father's angry strikes. This led to an even worse beating, but just as every night, Toya rested easy knowing he had done his job. Then, as Toya's arms began to lose themselves to burn scars and his face going next, the final baby was born. Toya was amazed, finding his newest baby brother adorable, if not slightly spaced out, even for a baby. Rei handed him the baby first, and Toya had to ask as he shifted the baby around in his scarred arms. "Mom, what's his name?" Toya asked, and Rei smiled. "His name is Shoto." Toya grinned and wiggled his fingers above his baby brother's face. "Hi, Shoto. I'm Toya, your big brother." The baby grabbed a scarred finger and cooed. "I'll always protect you. You got it? You can count on me." A promise made, with no realization of what that meant. Years later, Shoto awakened his quirk. To Toya's amazement, he had both of their parents' powers. However, that amazement would be quickly overridden by fear as he realized what that meant for his baby brother. Now, as scars reached down his arms and legs, he managed to approach Shoto and carefully held his hands. "You gotta hide this from Dad, okay?" he whispered harshly. Shoto did not know why, but he knew he trusted his brother and nodded. Toya felt relief and went to bed calm that night. Little did the young boy know, it would be the last night he would spend in the Todoroki residence. The young boy woke up naturally the next morning, and that is how he knew something was wrong. He rushed out of his room, finding Fuyumi and Natsuo eating breakfast and Rei locked eyes with her son. He didn't even ask a word, the lack of the youngest and eldest member of their family being all he needed to confirm. The young one ran as hard as he could to their personal training ground. He needed to save them. He needed to protect them. He needed to be a hero, his family's hero, to save them from that monster. When he finally arrived, he found his baby brother being forced to release flames and ice at an unhealthy rate for someone whose quirk had just awakened. "Dad, what are you doing?" Toya snapped, picking up his baby brother and cuddling him close. "He's just awakened his quirk. He's only 4. "Toya, what are you doing? Put him down and go back home." "Dad, no, we're training. Leave Shoto out of it." Toya snapped back. Endeavor glared down at his son. "Are you defying me?" Endeavor snarled, and Toya knew what that tone meant. He turned and told Shoto to run. Shoto listened, and the last image he saw was his older brother taking up a fighting stance against their father. "Toya, stand down." The young boy met his father's wrathful cyan eyes with determined aquamarines and said one word. No! The boy was beat within an inch of his life, and the last thing that he saw before his consciousness faded was his father dragging Shoto by the wrist. When the boy awoke, nothing greeted him but the empty silence of the forest and the blazing sun. Then, at that moment, over a decade's worth of repressed anger broke free from the body of the young boy, and they broke free in the form of the azure flames. They burned so bright that the fire could be seen from miles away. Alright, part 1 of Dabi's backstory altered and complete. Why do I like this backstory more than the original? 1, because I made it, so I better like it. And 2, it did what I assumed Toya's backstory in canon would do. Make Endeavor the ultimate victim maker and make Toya the ultimate victim. This way, no matter what Toya does in the future, it's kinda justified in his past. In my new timeline, Endeavor was a horrid individual who tortured his son for upwards of 13 years, only to straight drop him and immediately begin abusing the next useful one. That is more believable to me. 2, Savior Complex is generally more interesting to me for a character so tied into destruction just like Dabi. This is also a secret tool that'll help us later. Now, let's move on to the second part of Dabi's backstory I don't like. I don't like how All For One was the one who found Dabi. For lack of a better term, it ruffles my feathers. He already has Shigaraki. Leave Dabbers alone. It also feeds into another issue I have with Dabi, where he has too many resources and too much information for a guy who ran from All For One after being with him for like 2 days and presumably lived on the streets for a couple of years. This is shown especially in his interactions with Hawks, with him somehow knowing his real name, where his mom stays at, and just general wherewithal he has despite being the equivalent to a street bum as far as I know. He also kind of just shows up in the main narrative through Giran, but like, how did he even make that connection? Dabi's life pre-main timeline at present is still very abstract, and at the time of writing and recording this, chapter 386, I highly doubt that's going to change at the rate the story is going, so allow me to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and make another change in Dabi's past. When the young man woke up, he was in a hospital bed. Burns coated more of his body, and it was still hard for him to breathe. He struggled to move when a doctor walked in. "Greetings, Toya Todoroki, yes?" the doctor asked, and Toya nodded with the best of his ability. "Nice to meet you, young man. I'm Dr. Npitsu, and I'll be your physical therapist for the next couple of weeks." Weeks? Weeks? He couldn't wait weeks. He needed to get back home. "Do not worry, Mr. Todoroki. The association has sent a live-in maid to the residence to watch over your siblings in your absence." That calmed Toya's heart slightly, but he was confused. Who was the association? The word kept floating about as Toya recovered. Physical therapy, and weeks ended up passing before he got his voice back. Upon questioning, he learned that he was saved by none other than the Hero Association. Hey, wait, hear me out, put that thing down, hear me out, no, I'm not breaking my rules and turning Dabi good early, I'm not, I promise, please put that thing down. What I'm doing is killing 2 birds with 1 stone, giving Dabi reasonable access to resources and information that would pertain to the relevant information he has later on in the narrative, along with removing All For One from his narrative. Those are 2 glaring issues I have, so I fixed them in my own way. Another thing, as we know, the Hero Association is far from all good, in spite of the name. It can make a Hawks, and it can make a Lady Nagant. There's dichotomy, and both of those guys are pretty much morally gray at best. As per my rules, you can guess which path Dabi's gonna go down in terms of moral gray, good, or darkness. Now, the reason the Hero Association is picking up the scraps left behind by Endeavor is because it's Endeavor. In canon, I believe he's actually the most successful hero in terms of both rescues and takedowns. He's just not as popular or as showboaty and flashy as All Might. The moment where he had a kid, and by a quirk marriage no less, the Hero Association began foaming at the mouth for new talent. However, Toya was locked off for years because of Endeavor, meaning all the association could do was watch and wait. One way or another, they were going to get an asset. Being the Hero Association, as dark and malignant as they are, they had found Endeavor's route to his training ground and realized the patterns. So one day, when Toya isn't walking there with his father, rather with a 4-year-old, they knew something was amiss and staked out the location. Toya snapped, setting himself in the forest ablaze, and the Hero Association snatched him right up. Of course, being the Hero Association, they don't tell him this. nor do they tell him about his night terrors. Unknown to Toya, he didn't just lose his voice for a while because of the fire. He also lost it from screaming out for his family's safety in the middle of the night. The image of his father's flaming fist plastered into his memory and haunting his dreams.
Okay, I know if you think I'm awful for this, you have a very solid leg to stand on, but hear me out. It's all for the character development. You gotta trust me. However, with this being the case, due to this knowledge, that is exactly how the Hero Association knew to reassure Toya about his family to keep him in line. When finally back in operating shape, Toya asks what happened. In this time period, the Hero Association decided to hedge their bets. When Toya asked what happened, a video was played for him. It's his own funeral. His mother, younger sister, and younger brothers were crying over his casket. Endeavor stood silently a few feet back, a face of stone. Toya was heartbroken and asked what happened. Another video played, the fire he caused burning. The video seemed to last hours, no one coming to save him until the Hero Association themselves stepped in. So they think I'm dead? Toya asked, and the president of the Hero Association nodded. Yes, however, we have good news and an offer. The footage was changed to the Todoroki house at dawn. To Toya's shock, Endeavor hadn't dragged out Shoto. Endeavor has seemed to relax his trading on your family with your death. Any attempts we've made to reach out about giving for information on your survival and whereabouts have been ignored entirely. I believe he thinks we're lying. How do you know all of this? The Hero Association president raised an eyebrow. Toya, you're no secret. You know that. The association monitors all heroes and their families to make sure they aren't in danger. So you watched me and my family suffer for years and did nothing? Toya snapped, blazing up. On the contrary, another video was played, and it was the president discussing with Endeavor about his treatment of the children, and ended up resorting to a shouting match. As explicatives began to be thrown about, the video was paused, and Toya's flames died down. As you can see, I did my best. That is one session of many, the president said, flipping through tens of videos, both men visually aging as time passed. We are unable to place any cameras in private residences, so any cases will be brought up against him with solely our word. With your absence, I made sure to send a live-in maid to watch over your family in your stead. Toya nodded quietly. I can't go home, can I? Toya asked. You can. We won't stop you, but we wouldn't advise returning, the president said. Toya considered what occurred. He could force his way back into the home, and then what? He wasn't strong enough to stop his father before, and if anything, he is much weaker than he was then. Either way, Shoto would be training, and who knows, with him coming back, it may scar them even more, like a corpse rising from a grave. It could make his father end him for real this time. It could make his own father take his life. And it could make it even worse for the family he tried so hard to protect. What's your proposal? The president hid his reaction from the young man, though glee lit up his soul. You work for us in the underground sector. You've heard of heroes like Eraserhead and Lady Nagant, yes? The president asked, and Toya nodded. You will work on infiltrations, espionage work, and cleanup. You will be paid as you wish into your own free and accessible account, and all your expenses for staying here will be covered. You don't have to pay for those. You can train as you please with other members of our underground sector. Toya nodded. How much will I be paid? The president answered, and Toya's eyes widened, if only slightly. Fine, I'll do it, on 2 conditions. Those being, the president asked. Half my pay gets deposited in a separate account to pay for my siblings' needs, whether it be schooling, general expenses, or whatever. 2, I want to visit my grave. Just once. I'll never go back again, Toya explained. That's fine by me. You'll have to be escorted to your grave, however. Toya nodded. A few days later, in a cloak, the young man stood before his own gravestone. He pressed his hands together and lowered his head. Toya Todoroki is dead. I am what remains. And there we go. Two birds, single stoned. Now, with this being the case, the obvious next point is to fill in Dabi's new middle point, that weird gap between the birth of Dabi and the first appearance of Dabi in the main narrative. To continue where the present left off, Toya, now codenamed Dabi at his own request. Fun fact, if you didn't know, it translates to cremation, fitting into the whole I'm what remains of Toya. That was a bar. I do like that. Shout out to Horikoshi. I know it's just because he was burned, but still, that's kind of a bar.
And Toya takes the first year of his employment to train. He trained under people for more physical fighting, and knowing he should be careful with his quirk since he needs his body to last a lifetime. The Hero Association is what actually gets him to dye his hair, and he's almost convinced to get contacts. However, he keeps his eyes. He can't lose those. They're a symbol of his connection to that dark past. He understood their reasoning, however. No matter what, the Hero Association was telling the truth about Dabi's existence and the knowledge of his presence. After all, he was meant to be the next endeavor, meaning that the better he hid himself, the more work could be done. Also, just to promote his own internal rebellion against the monstrous villain Endeavor had become in his eyes. He gets piercings in his ears. While they hurt, they do not hurt as much as his father did, and seeing the untraditional appearance in the mirror brought him joy, simply spiting the traditional man his father was. Dabi's missions began small: infiltration, connection building, commission work. The main goal of the Hero Association is to get Dabi into the underworld and have him establish himself as a useful thug and eventually villain. Now, to break the narrative, you may be wondering why the Hero Association wants to do this when at the same time they already are building up Hawks, a man who will eventually become an underground infiltration guy while also being a massive public figure, and one, diversification. The Hero Association would not want to put all of its eggs in one basket. Hawks was and is amazing, but he'd be too useful as a general hero not to be used, and that's why he became number 2. Meanwhile, the walking fireman with more burn scars than family members is definitely less marketable. By having both, they get to cover both sides of the spectrum. 2, Dabi is generally just more powerful and well-trained than Hawks, through all of his experience with Endeavor, and his own quirk, meaning that the Hero Association does not need to worry about him on longer missions. Dabi can sort of just disappear, and unlike Hawks, they'll have a guarantee he'll return, even if more burnt than before. 3, Hawks and Dabi are 2 characters on 2 different sides of the organization. They aren't necessarily filling the same role even in the slightest, so it's not even much overlap, and due to this, they don't ever actually meet up. In fact, Dabi finds out about Hawks the same time everyone else does when he becomes a popular superhero. Thusly, the two do not meet up until their canon meetup, well, in canon. Now, years pass, and Dabi is learning and learning ever more. From his experiences, his teachers at the association, and about the organization themselves. Slowly but surely, after racking up bodies upon bodies, and learning more about the people he was assigned to bond with and then execute, Dabi's burning hatred for Endeavor began to spread to Hero Association, and Hero Society as a whole. He would make sure to collect all internal information he could through conversation skills he picked up working in the underworld. Dabi also hires a hacker to get him access to all the confidential files where he learns of Hawks and more. The info shows him the truth. Was this what the world that all that glamour was built upon? The bodies of people who would never know why they died. The hero world itself was twisted. However, as Dabi attended Fuyumi's graduation from college, at a distance, with a hood on his head, something that he had paid the entire scholarship for through his work, he realized the never-ending trap. This is what the association viewed as a necessary evil. All the lives they had taken. And Dabi? Well, at this point in time, Dabi was forced to agree. However, that was until the advent of Stain. Stain inspires Dabi, this time genuinely, and Dabi, now seeing the corruption of the entire hero world firsthand, begins to hatch a plan. It would take time, a lot of luck, and loads of determination, but little did he know his next mission would afford him just what he needed. Thanks to the advent of Stain in the League of Villain Attacks, the Hero Association was itching to get their foot in the door, and they had the perfect operative for it, and that operative was all ready to invade. Being a member of the criminal underworld that was pretty well known at this point, Girin calls up Dabi and offers him the position, and Dabi joins. Now, this is the part I like the most, because I don't actually have to do anything.
Dabi stays pretty much the same in his League of Villains run. He's still the mean, cold, callous firebrand that's a dangerous asset, except now he's mostly putting on an act, and he's working for the Hero Association. The only change I'm making is that he doesn't actually harm any of the kids, like ever. Which ironically enough, I don't think he really does in canon outside Tokoyami and Nejire. He just can't bring himself to do it. He sees himself in them, and thusly doesn't want to harm them. Especially when he encounters Shoto at the forest training camp, he just grabs Bakugo and goes. Of course, this is actually hard to notice. Dabi is wildly enigmatic before his big reveal, and that works. One major thing I want to change before the big reveal is that Dabi gives Ending specific instructions to leave his family and the kids out of it when he goes to attack Endeavor or else. Dabi watches the report and quickly finds out Ending did not listen. To say the very least, this Dabi who loves his family above all else slaughters Ending for disobeying. And since the Hero Association couldn't necessarily care less about Ending, they're perfectly fine with that. And obviously you wouldn't know this at the time. At most, Ending would mention something about being told to leave the kids, but he wouldn't leave the kids, obviously. Now, one more major change. Right before the war begins, something that Dabi knows is going to happen because of his ties to the association, he pulls a few strings and makes sure his mother, younger brother, and sister are all safe in a bunker. He couldn't get Shoto because he was drafted for the war, which annoys Dabi, but he had a plan for that too. The war rocks up and works out pretty much the exact same, except actually make it so that Dabi is sad about Twice's death, even if he agrees with Hawks that he needed to die. However, let this only be a look he gives at the corpse, and maybe keep the crazy smile he has. And actually, you know what? No, cut that. It doesn't fit the more human and slightly less insane character we have in this timeline. Of course, Dabi knows who Hawks is because of all the insider information he's gathered up over the years, and then we get to Dabi's dance. It's all the same up until one point. Toya, upon hearing Shoto's concern about Natsuo, leaps down and nods. "I'm sorry for causing you fear, kid. I told that madman not to hurt my brother, or any of you. Don't worry, I took care of him." Toya walked up, and Shoto, remembering the safety he felt with his brother all those years ago, accepts the hug given to him, his guard down. And unlike before, in the original world, nothing actually happens here. "I'm so proud of you, kid. You've gotten so strong, and look at you. You're almost as tall as me, and still growing," Toya said, ruffling his brother's hair and patting him on the back as he walked by him. "Get out of here, kid. It's not safe," Toya declared. "At your school dorm, there should be an address. Head there and hide out." "Wait, what? Toya, wait!" Dabi turned, looking back towards his brother with a raised eyebrow. "What's up, kid?" "Wait, what? I have so many questions." "Don't worry about it, kid. Nothing to worry about," Dabi assured him, walking towards the stunned Endeavor. "Hey, old man, let's have one last sparring match. This one's for keeps." Then, of course, Dabi gets restrained by Best Genius. His widespread speech happens too, like normal, except this time instead of just using Hawks and having slaughtered just innocent people, he lists all the executions he performed in the name of the Hero Association, the guilty and the innocent, his backstory, everything. So yes, it's all the same, but worse for the hero world and better for Dabi's character, at least in my mind. As usual, the war ends and the heroes prepare for the next one. This is where Dabi's backstory would naturally be placed, but this time, the Todoroki family have a different goal. They see the boy that protected them all those years ago is still alive, no matter how hurt and buried beneath scars and agony he is. They need to stop him, and they need to bring him back to the light. And since this is a shonen manga, that obviously means fighting him. The second war happens, and now we end up back where it all began. The two stood apart, no more than 5 feet from each other. The battle had already begun to rage about the two young men, their eyes locked in the center of a proverbial storm. "Shoto, stand down. This isn't your fight," the white-haired young man declared calmly as he could. "Toya, you know I can't do that," the boy with half-red and half-white hair declared. The older of the two men, scarred deep with wounds and burns of many origins, grit his teeth. "Shoto, please. As your older brother, I am begging you to stand down. This isn't your battle. It never was, and it never will be," Dabi said, stepping away from his baby brother. "Toya, what are you planning to do to Dad?" Shoto asked, and the scarred man sighed. "Shoto, you know exactly what I plan to do," the older brother responded solemnly. The younger brother let out a low breath before beginning to blaze and frost. "Then you know
why I have to stop you, Shoto said. The scarred man let out a tired laugh and gave a proud smile. I'm glad you grew up strong, Shoto. The older brother took up a fighting stance, getting ready to engage his younger brother. Come on then, knock me down, kid. Shoto couldn't help but smile back, lunging in. The two brothers exchanged blows, Toya sticking to hand for the most part, deflecting and redirecting his brother, guiding away fire palms and ice strikes. Your form's a bit loose there, kid. Firm up your stance, Toya said, dodging a flaming palm. He backed up and thrust the palm forward. Like that. You want to neutralize the recoil as much as possible. Shoto nodded and lunged in again. Come on, kiddo. You should have gotten some of our flexibility from Mom. You can kick higher than that. Shoto watched as his brother performed a spin kick that flew right over Shoto's head. Shoto copied and Toya clapped. Why are you training me? We're fighting right now, Shoto said, and Toya shrugged. Like I said before, kid, you weren't even supposed to be here, and I'm not here to fight you. It's not your battle, Dabi said, deflecting a punch and temporarily blazing to melt an oncoming ice strike. I know what Dad did was wrong, unforgivable, and I'm never going to ask you to forgive him. Dabi chuckled. I'm glad, kid, 'cause I never will. But I am asking you not to kill him, Shoto said, and some mirth faded from Dabi's eyes. Kid, do you really think he deserves to live? After all he did to our family, Dabi asked, and Shoto held still. Many a night he had mulled over the same thought. The same hatred flowed through his veins at a point. However, for Dabi, it was likely to an exponentially higher degree than what Shoto ever had felt or ever would feel. Yes, because of the man he's become today and the good he can do for tomorrow, Shoto said, taking up a fighting stance once again, affirming himself in the battle against his brother. Dabi let out a cold chuckle once again, taking up a fighting stance of his own. You know what they say, kid. The past never dies. The two lunged into combat, exchanging blows of flesh, fire, and ice, both nearing further and further to a real battle. Think about what we would feel. Think about the people you swore to protect, Shoto cried, blasting a wave of ice. I have protected you. All of you. You shouldn't even be here right now. You should be in a bunker with Natsu, Fufu, and Mom. Not here risking your life in a battle that isn't yours. Risking your life against villains, Dabi snapped, fighting back against the raging ice through avoidance, raising his body temperature just enough to avoid being frozen. I'm only here because of you. I came back to pay the debt I'm owed, Todoroki said, blasting fire with a refined palm strike. You don't owe me anything but your happy life and safety, Shoto, Dabi cried, ducking another strike and breaking Shoto's stance with a hard push to the chest. I want you to be in my life. I want you and Dad to be safe. That would make me happy. Shoto recovered with a foot back, coated in ice. Even if it makes you happy, that doesn't make you safe, Dabi roared, lunging for a grab. If he ever rebounds, he could hurt you and our family again. He can't do that if he's dead. Shoto swung with an ice kick, forcing Dabi to retreat. Toya, who is hurting me right now? Who is the source of my pain right now? It's him! It's always been him! Dabi cried, the blaze beginning to burn deep within his chest. It's you, Toya! You're the one who's hurting me. You're hurting Mom, hurting Fuyumi, hurting Natsu, hurting us all! Shoto burned with a blaze and released ice as well. And Dabi faltered. What? Do you know how much Natsuo cried when he found out you were alive? How hard Fuyumi did? Tears began to burst at the eyes of the youngest Todoroki, instantly freezing or steaming depending on the side. How much Mom cried? How many tears I shed, Toya? Dabi choked on his words. I'm not so fine. Fine, Toya. Keep running. Keep fighting back. I'm going to stop you, and I'm going to bring you back, Todoroki declared, activating his super move. Hi, Pencil here. I know this is super corny, and definitely not everyone's thing, but hey, Shoto is still Shoto, and I think saving these villains is pretty corny anyway, and I really want to break Dabi down with stuff that only his family could say to him. Top this off with the fact that my friend bet me I couldn't organically work in a I know the real Hugh was in there moment, and be fair,
To be absolutely fair, she was 100% right, but still, darn it, I had to try. This is why I wanted to throw in a savior complex in there, and by really making Dabi love his family, because otherwise I couldn't actually see a feasible way to save the man. Like, anything else couldn't break Dabi out of his mania in my mind. I don't know how they're going to break Dabi out of his mania in the main timeline either. That seems like a super lost cause. So the best way to do it? Easy. Give him another responsibility that coincides yet conflicts with his mania that his family could exploit. Yeah, it's mean. Pretty dark, but hey, I'd like it. Anyway, back to the story. Shoto defeats Dabi in a massive frost explosion like before, except Dabi is now conflicted and isn't sure on where he stands. Shoto stands before his brother, breathing heavy before dropping to his hands and knees, tears freezing and steaming once again. However, deep in this conflict, the worst that could happen to a Dabi whose faith in his mission is currently being shaken occurs. He is given the chance to relapse. Kurogiri is freed, and Dabi is given the chance to strike down the man he had desired to kill for years. He breaks free of the ice when a torrent of blaze, and Shoto chases his brother to the battle of All for One and Endeavor. Now, I am writing this around chapter 386, so whatever pops off will pop off. But here's how I would end Dabi's conflict as a character and quote-unquote save him. Upon seeing Endeavor, he sees the same look of terror that he had seen on his family's face for years. But it's not directed at him. It's directed at All for One, the man behind the destruction of the hero society Dabi so loathed. "Hey, Dad," Dabi said, burning ablaze, but to Endeavor's shock, it was weaker than before. "What do you—" "Toya, I said stop!" Shoto roared, blasting ice that quickly died against Dabi's blaze. "Shoto, get away!" Dabi snapped back. "It's dangerous here. All for One is right!" Suddenly, Dabi was forced to blast blue flames at the man who tried to grab his brother. "What are you doing?" Dabi snarled at the greatest villain in history. "Well, Dabi, my life is soon to end. I think I have a right to have fun with quirks that have always interested me," All for One said. "Besides, don't you have an important mission? More important than I could ever be. The man you despise kneels before you in a weakened state. Finish him. Take the revenge you so justly deserve." This is where Dabi's world broke in two. His desires, his needs stood before him. He could complete his journey here and now, slay Endeavor and risk his brother. That would guarantee their safety, right? Their safety would be their happiness. Could he risk their happiness? Would he be happy if he had to watch another funeral? There was no doubt his family would despise him, especially his youngest brother. Could he really risk that? Could he really be that selfish, and risk the madman he decided to work under for his own gain, taking away the power and hypothetically the life of his beloved brother? Could he risk it all? Should he risk it all? "Toya, please, I don't care what you do to me after this. I deserve a death more painful than any in the world. Just, please, help me keep Shoto safe," Endeavor said, having risen to his eldest son's side as he blazed to a heat to combat All for One and the clones of Toga Twice. This was it, the point of no return. As the greatest villain in history geared up to steal the quirk of the youngest Todoroki and the Toga Twices began to multiply, a choice was made. Suddenly, a wave of Toga Twices were burnt to death, and another blast of Azure flame warded All for One further off. "We'll settle this after the fight, old man. We have a job to do." Cue the most super epic legendary father-son battle known to man against the literal demigod that is All for One. I want crazy combo moves. I want synergy. I want everything imaginable to pop off here like it's the most legendary fight in the series. In a roaring blaze, all three mighty fires blasting All for One to death. Yeah, I know. Real heroes don't kill, Pencil. I know, but I wanted to parallel Endeavor killing High and Hood as a killing of his past self, with Dabi killing All for One with his family as not only a killing of his past self, but also a real proper death of the old world, leading to a contradiction of Dabi's "the past never dies" line, because, well, Dabi's killing the past quite literally, lighting a new path to the future. This also feeds into the Phoenix theme, where Toya the hero rises out the ashes of Dabi, the cremated, born as someone with the same goals as the original, fighting for his family and destroying the hero society that created him, except his methods to achieve said goals have been reborn as well. There we go, Dabi saved. I get my promise too. Now, of course, I still think it's criminal that we don't have a firefight between father and son, but I fully acknowledge that in every case where it could happen, it can't for plot, so to wrap up the B plot of My Hero Academia in a neat little bow, I'll do this. The family stands over the burnt corpse of All for One, Dabi dead with it, now Toya once again. Hey, kid, can you cool me down? Dad too. Todoroki was tired, but he nodded, cooling both men down. However, from the stress of the day and the extreme exertion, the young man passed out. Toya caught him and laid the young man down as Hawks, Uraraka, and Asui finished the final toga twice. Dad! Endeavor looked at his son, with a tired yet happy and proud smile on his face. Yes, Toya? The young man took the fighting stance. The fight is over. We need to finish this, Toya declared. And to Toya's shock, Endeavor nodded completely and mirrored his son's fighting stance. I understand. Cue a much less epic fight than the one against All for One. If my story is to be believed, these two are so burnt out from their respective battles to the near death despite being cooled down that all they can really do is throw good old-fashioned hands with minor spurts of fire here and there. Think of this as a knockdown drag-out fight between two people closer than you ever knew. I want to almost make it like full final Agni Kai in terms of spectacle, but I want this to be small, personal. Think of it as an equivalent to the final fight in Persona 5 Royal in terms of exhaustion, the fight between Morijin and Olympio Park pre-powers and choreography mixed with the same emotional weight as the final Agni Kai. It's a close quarters emotional wreck of a fight between full-grown men of the same blood who have changed for the better. Toya has had less exhaustion throughout the day and still has both arms, so he has the upper hand. And he finally manages to knock his father down with the same punch that knocked him down all those years ago. Toya, with the last of his strength, lights his azure flame one last time, his fist alight with the aquamarine embers. Do it, Toya. I deserve it, Endeavor said, not fighting back, no resistance, ready for death. With one last roar containing the hatred of 2 decades of pain, Endeavor was punched across the face. The action was painful, but Endeavor was very much alive. Toya, you don't deserve death. It's too easy, Dabi said, sitting across from his father. You will live every day until the day you die with what you've done, and you will look at me and the pain, the suffering, the agony I've left in my wake, knowing that I am what you created. That suffering, that should repay your debt in time, Toya said, falling back from exhaustion and staring up at the sky. The end. That's my Dabi rewrite. If you want an epilogue, just imagine Dabi in court for 5 years, fighting his case and doing everything in the name of the Hero Association, and getting pardoned through the connections he made, and he lives happily ever after with the Todoroki family, supporting Shoto as a hero, and still, verbatim, hating Endeavor. Trust me, he never forgives him. But regardless, I kept to my word. Dabi's design, the same. His powers, the same. Saving him, the same. His narrative placement, the same. His end goal, the same. With a twist ending, the same. All his evil. Just a little bit lawful. I would like this Dabi. In fact, I would probably love him. We keep all the same moments, we flesh out his character, make his personality and motivations more humane and understandable, and his eventual quote-unquote saving comes from a revamp of both of his goals, protecting his family and making Endeavor suffer. This is what I could come up with. This video was meant to be 15 minutes long, and I have no idea how long it'll actually be. I had a friend glance over the script, and she's the biggest Dabi fan I know, so the fact that she didn't strangle me on sight, I'll assume this is actually kind of palatable. I like this exercise. It's fun to work on altering stories with limitations, so if you have any other characters you'd like to see me tackle in any way, let me know down below. By the length of this video, you can probably tell why things like the war arc rewrite and the second war arc write, or I suppose rewrite, because now the war seems to be nearing its end, are taking a while. Like a fat while. Like this is just one character that I had to rewrite the plot of. Imagine an entire arc. But give me some time. I'm cooking, and I'll make it work. However, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure the notifications will miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You can now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 to get the same perks and more. Now, thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dago the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members who kind of plays Greyhound, Kids Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, King Sukuna, NMA, Real Rare, and Paris Arnold. I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons, Super Gamer Q, Steron, Sean, Sammy, Oexian, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin, Encarnacion, Josh Brown, and Igneo.
And I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 member, Autumn Mornings Lazo. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 members, Jay Warrior and Robbie Uchiha. And I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to our $10 patrons, Panda Goat, Joaquin Munoz, and Idem Okami. And I'd like to give a gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, China Doll 09. I'd like to give another gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.